Before we get into the show, let's give some love. NeedEssentials.com. They're actually hosting a screening for Lost Track Atlantic episode 2, May 30th. So this weekend at Byron Theatre in Byron Bay, Australia, from 6 p.m. onward. Tickets are $15. So if you're near Byron Bay and you want to watch Lost Track Atlantic's episode 2 with the cast and crew, go check that out.
Have you ever been to Byron Bay?
I have.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, huh?
When was the last time you were there?
Probably 07 or 05, something like that.
Yeah. I was there 2019 and I'm afraid I missed its real epic heyday.
No, even when I was there, it was kind of like Laguna Beach.
Yeah.
You know, like over the top, uber groovy. I don't know. It's weird. I'm in such a weird space regarding our surf culture and our demographic and surfers as a whole, you know, like, I don't know, surfers are the worst, you know, and I'm right there with them. Part of me is like, I'm really kind of romanticizing the 1970s when a big part of the surf culture was like, F you.
Yeah.
F you to your contest, especially here in North America. You know, there was big sort of black wetsuits, whiteboards, screw the commercialism, we're out. And of course, we're way too down the beaten path now, but I think Byron was pretty cool, probably, you know, in the 70s and probably early 80s, but probably even into the 90s. I don't know when they lost the boat, but it feels like there was a regentrification of the region, and all the grooviness had to leave and got placed with, like, I don't even know what, just like yoga parlors.
I agree.
By the way, I love yoga. I'm not anti-yoga.
That's what I was thinking the entire time is I fully agree with everything you're saying, but I still like an acai bowl and I like a bottle of kombucha.
Me too.
So it's kind of like, I go there and I cringe in the same way you're saying for the exact same reasons. And then I'm like, man, I'm really grateful that there's like an organic, you know, sandwich shop right here.
I would absolutely,
even though it's $15 a sandwich.
No problem. Sign me up for the yoga class and the sandwich. But there's like this, and I guess it's just old guy romanticism or something like that. I don't know what it is, but part of it got started with Carlos. I was reading Carlos Zamora's thing on Instagram about, you know, I guess yesterday. Did you follow
it for the show? Save it for the show.
Aren't we in the show?
This is pre-roll. So NeedEssentials.com, and then of course surfnvs.com for all your surfboard finning needs.
Yes.
Their promo code is the word podcast, and you will save 10% off your Apex series fins, which I've got a solid rotation of fins going right now, and I am having a blast. I'm riding the same board, swapping in 3 different sets. So fins are expensive in general. And when I was coming up, I hated buying fins because I was on a tight budget. And it's like, if I could come up with the $600 for the surfboard, it was hard to come up with the extra 100 for fins. And so not only are NVS's fins less expensive than what you're probably used to paying, our promo code saves you an additional 10%. So surfnvs.com. And on to today's show, Scott, call us in.
Yeah, Guy. Yeah, friggin' Guy. Welcome, everybody. It is Spit. It's Wednesday. It is May the 26th. Actually, 4 months to the day from the Boardroom Surfboard show presented by US Blanks, taking place in Del Mar. David, good morning.
Good morning. Is that enough time for you to pull it all together, Scott?
Oh, absolutely. No, I've got so much cool stuff going on with it. I'm very excited about it all.
I feel like that's around the corner, and it's not enough time for me to pull together anything that I need to pull together. But I'm excited for it, nevertheless.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. It's going to be cool. So,
coming up quick.
Yeah, and we are excited about it. So, one of the things we're doing is Best in Show, right? So we just put out a call for entries for Best in Show, and we're asking every board builder in the world, the global board building community, to put an entry into Best in Show. The first there's 2 categories. There's the alternative performance surfboard category, and there's the longboard category. So you can pick one of those two categories and build your board. And we have $2,500 in cash and prizes to the first place winner in each division, in each category. And we also have prizes for second and third place as well. And that whole thing is presented by Zio Botha Organic Italian Wines. And so anyway, call for entries. Send us an email saying you want to be involved. You don't have to have a booth at the show to put a board in Best in Show. What we're trying to do is get all of the most beautiful, like highly crafted surfboards under one roof for a couple of days. And we've got judges that are going to do put a discerning eyeball on it and take a peek at them. And yeah.
Who are the judges and what is the judging criteria?
Wow. Okay. So the judges are Joe Roper, Wayne Rich, and Peter St. Pierre. If you don't know those guys, they are Californians who are highly, they've been in the board building process for 40, 50 years. In Peter's case, maybe close to 60 years. But so those guys are going to be taking a look at it. The judging criteria, let me see if I can pull that up real quick. I got it right here, wouldn't you know? So the judging criteria is, first and foremost, David, the boards must be functional surfboard designs. Number two, the quality of the craftsmanship from nose to tail, including but not limited to shape, lamination, artwork, sand job, the finish. Every aspect of the craftsmanship must be top quality and will be scrutinized. In addition, David, within the alternative performance category, only the judges will also take into account materials and fabrication. So this is an opportunity to incorporate state-of-the-art and or cutting-edge materials and or unique build processes. So we're asking you to impress the judges if you're building in the alternative performance category. And that might mean space age composites. That might mean all sorts of new, different fin designs or whatever it might be. You need to incorporate all that stuff. Speaking of which, because you brought up at the beginning, we talked NVS Fins there, one of our sponsors. Ian Folke, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think husband. Are they married, Rosie Hodge and him?
Yeah, they have a newborn kid too.
Yeah, they have a newborn kid, but I wasn't sure if they were married. But anyway.
They're married, yeah.
Ian Folke, his father, Bob, is a San Clemente local, has been forever. Bob and his cohort, Norm from 180 Surfboards have designed a pretty unique fin system. Have you seen this thing?
No.
So imagine when you do a turn on a surfboard, your fin turns with the I don't know what the right phrase is, but turns with the surfboard. Okay. In other words, the fin isn't static, it's dynamic. So you turn this way and the fin moves.
Is it the fin itself that's flexing, or the base of the fin has like a hinge on it?
Thank you. The base of the fin, and I hope I'm not butchering it for these guys. I should probably get them on a podcast and have them talk about it. But does this help at all?
No, not at all.
Anyway, the base of the fin moves. This is one of those things where I'm like, hey, man, we've got some state-of-the-art stuff happening, from Bob and Norm at 180 Surfboards. I'm actually going to be test riding one of their boards. And I'll hopefully I'd like to get you on it too.
Yeah, let's do it. So is it just the fin system, or is it they're building, you have to get the entire board and it just comes with that fins?
I'm not sure. I think you can just get the fin system. But it's one of those, they do have great surfboards too, great surfboard designs, but I think the fin system is really where they're kind of outside of the box, and it's pretty exciting. I think it's one of those things that a lot of times stuff comes along that's just too good to be true almost, like, and it's hard for the conservative nature of the surfboard manufacturing industry to sort of adopt stuff.
Yeah.
And you need sort of a tipping point before everyone goes, oh yeah, that does make tons of sense, you know?
Yeah, totally.
And hopefully I think we're going to get there with this fin design, but we'll see, you know,
So
we'll see how it goes.
let me get clarification. Does the fin itself flex, or is it the box that has a hinge built into it?
The box has, I believe the box has a hinge built into it. So
okay.
the fin,
or like a swivel or something.
yeah, there's like a swivel. So the fin can kind of do this, you know,
like a fish's.
Yeah, but that might be too fluid. It's more like, you know, like, you know what I mean?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I'm listening.
Yeah. Yeah, I am too. And I'm just trying to point out, these are the types of things in the alternative performance category that I think are going to get the attention of the judges. But again, understand first and foremost, the boards must be functional surfboard designs. So they're basically asking you to already have proof of concept. Don't come in with some crazy, you know, over the top, you know, spacecraft.
Yeah, this isn't like the experimental
no
show, or this is best in show. So
yeah. So anyway, call for entries to all of you out there, board builders around the world. Send us an email. Let us know you want to be in. It's free to enter. It doesn't cost you a dime. You just got to build the board and show up, and Sweet. You're in. Yeah.
Sweet. How many boards are you expecting to be in the show?
Well, gosh, the last few years, Best in Shows had quite a few boards, probably 30 or 40 boards. We have two categories, like I said, longboard and alternative performance. So I'd love it if there was, you know, a lot. You know, I have space. I have a much bigger space this year. It's actually going to be like a walk-in sort of, you know, 60 by 60 square foot space for all of the boards, for everyone to be able to walk in and take it all in, you know.
And does the board builder keep the board?
Yes, the board builder will keep the board and the prize. And oh, by the way, you can go onto boardroomshow.com and get all the information about how to sign in, how to send us an email, and all the do's and don'ts.
Got it.
Boardroom
is there going to be any sort of mask or vaccine protocol, or do we have to wait until we're closer to understand what that looks like?
Oh, no. Things are opening up. If you have indoor events of 5,000 or less, you don't have to have masks or anything like that here in San Diego.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very good.
It is recommended that you get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Just so that my insurance doesn't go through the roof.
Gotcha. So you, in the pre-roll, where you were starting to talk about the Malibu situation. There was
yeah,
a meeting was held. A meeting was held yesterday. An Instagram was posted 4 days ago.
Yeah, I don't know too much about it. I just I was scanning Beach Grit this morning, and Chaz had written something about it, basically. And so maybe you have as much insight as I do. I just thought it was fascinating. Basically, Carla Zamora, who I know, and I know her husband, she's a Malibu local. Her father was and probably still is. I don't know. He might have passed. I'm not sure, but anyway, Carla is fed up with all the vows apparently, and she's basically wants a solution. She's asking people to gather together. That was yesterday at the wall at Malibu, and try to come up with quote unquote strategies to make the protocol of catching waves at Malibu, to have some semblance of order, I guess, is what she's seeking. I really can't speak for her, but
can I speak for her?
Yeah, please do.
I'll read from her Instagram post. She said, "Imagine your home became an amusement park, new faces flocking daily to claim their e-ticket pass, except instead of getting in line, a free-for-all of bodies bob and weave, twist and tangle in hopes of getting a thrill. They don't even acknowledge your existence, much less recognize your local status. Correct me if I'm wrong, but just 2 decades ago, being from Malibu, quote, carried an air of prestige. We were masters of our spot, encouraged, even pressured to surf at the highest caliber possible, and given no leeway for forgiveness when we faltered. It was chaotic then too, but there was a method to the madness, control to the chaos. Rules were not just established, they were enforced. If you publicly cried about it, you felt it even harder. I'll skip the next paragraph. It's a little bit much. Fast forward 20 years, a pandemic single-handedly changed people's lives forever and increases the surfing population by astronomical proportions. As an outdoor activity relatively safe from exposure, 2020 saw nearly every other Joe take up surfing and every other schmo become a surf coach. Young adults were already versed in the sport began flocking in droves to camp in the lot for days on end. Note, this has been a problem prior to COVID. Photographers and videographers arrive with their own talent to rape and pillage the waves, shunning the existing talent who have paid their dues. So what do? Do we throw up our arms, sigh in defeat, and let the guests dictate the state of our home? I will not. I cannot. Please join me yesterday at 4 p.m. at the Wall to discuss, create, and implement a strategy to take back our home.
Wow. So a lot there to digest, right? The first thing is this concept of home, right? And by the way, I got to say, in the past, especially when I worked at Surfer, I was as ignorant, I would suggest, and as self-centered and as myopically sort of, I thought I was as entitled as some of this comes off. And luckily, as I'm getting older, I'm starting to slowly mature. But and I like Carla a lot, and I like Ian, and I just think this is a little misguided, because this concept of home, this concept that Malibu is somebody's home, and other people have to live by the rules of somebody's home. It's just a slippery slope. You know, Malibu's a state park.
On PCH, no less. It's not exactly private in any way, shape, or form.
So if your entire sort of soliloquy and basis for this is that this is our home and people aren't respecting my home, that's just kind of a non-starter, unfortunately. Like, there's no amount of planning you can do, at First Point Malibu to stop the onslaught. And it's kind of interesting when you think historically, this must have been the way that the guys that were first surfing at Malibu in, say, the 50s felt when Gidget came out. Because Gidget created this incredible, oh my God, almost overnight, there was a mass quantity of newbies, say from like, I don't know the exact years, let's say from 59 to 65. Those years just like saw a crazy influx of surfers at Malibu. And those original guys, like the Matt Kivlins of the world, they must have just went, I'm out, and a lot of them did. A lot of them just said, and that's kind of how you and I are, and Carlos feeling, I think, is like, I either have to just give up and just like take up mountain biking, or I have to adapt. And that means deciding to have some strategy meeting at the Wall, or it means getting a bigger board, or whatever, however you adapt. But I sense that a lot of surf spots around Southern California, a lot of the guys that have been surfing there forever feel this way right now. They're like, I think I'm just going to quit, or adapt. Like, I'm sort of adapting. Like, I'm trying to find little beach breaks. I'm doing that thing where, like, I'm the guy that'll surf middles instead of lowers or church. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to find some serenity off to myself. And if the wave quality is lesser, that's cool. I'll go to Mexico to get the perfect waves or whatever, to get, super good waves or whatever. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on Carla's hope for creating a strategy and her comments on Instagram? I know that they're not being taken well, at least on Beach Grit.
I didn't read Beach Grit's article, and that comes with all of its own kind of, I don't know,
trolls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But look, I don't think there's only two options. You said, what do you quit and take up mountain biking? No, there's a bunch of other options in between. And I think a very reasonable option is meeting at the wall to discuss a strategy for everybody. It's not, let's start throwing rocks at the people who are showing up or slashing their tires. It's those of us who have been here for a long time. Let's think about what were the lessons that we went through. And is there a way to kind of implement this rite of passage for these new people who are coming, because it served all this purpose. Now, there was also probably tons of peril in the version of rite of passage that she went through and that people in the 50s and 60s went through. Like, no version of a spot going through growing pains is perfect. There's been localism and there's been crimes and violence and all that sort of stuff. So I don't love the idea of like, it was always better the way we did it back then. But again, her strategy of let's meet at the wall to discuss might actually be the most level-headed and productive and effective method for developing through the growth. All of that said, I still come back to your original point, which is there's a real reeks of hypocrisy to be like, this is mine, when honestly, no, not even, it's not even close to yours or the previous generation or the one before that. And that goes true for any beach around the world, but especially for Malibu. Malibu is just so, I mean, it's right there. It's the epicenter. It's right in Los Angeles, one of the most populated cities in California. And it's one of the best waves on the coast. Of course, you have to expect that it's for everybody. If you have any expectation for anything else, I think you're going to be frustrated every single time that you go out there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I can imagine some of the ideas that come up at this meeting are like, let's have a set of rules that everybody has to obey, that we write out, and they're put up front and center for people as they walk through. The one cool thing about Malibu is, for the most part, you all have to enter and leave at the same spot, right, through this hole in the wall. And so, maybe there's something we read and we all have to read it and we have to check it off. And there's somebody that sits at a table and goes, okay, you've read it. I need you to sign this thing that says you've read it and you'll obey it. And maybe another thing at the strategy session was, look, we have to limit the number of people that surf here. And what I'm getting at, David, is that you need to be careful what you wish for, because this could come back to haunt you. For instance, at some point you might get the state involved because, oh, by the way, it's a state beach. And if you get the state involved and you want to know whose home it is, it's the Chumash Indians. So if you can prove some Chumash blood in your system, you get priority. And I'm just going to extreme. I'm going to extremes here.
That's the logic that she's following.
Yeah, I'm going to extremes. But I mean, at some point, these are, different ideas are coming out at the strategy meeting. And one of them is limit the amount of people in the water. Well, how do you do that? And, okay, let's just say there can only be 30 people in the water. And you got to take a number and each person gets 20 minutes. Because, oh, by the way, we have 700 people that want to surf here today. So everyone gets 20 minutes. Is that what you want? You just want 20 minutes with 30 people? Or so nobody really knows how it's going to play out. But a couple of things, I'll re-stress this. Be careful what you wish for. Once you start going down the idea of rules and laws that we have to obey, now you're getting the state involved. You're going to get the lifeguards involved. You're going to get, and some stuff. And the whole thing could just be like, how about no surfing? Nobody gets to surf, and oh, by the way, one other thing regarding, calling it your home or creating laws that everyone needs to obey. You have to go, who gives you the authority to create the law? Where's your authority born from? Where does it, how did you get it? Like, why is it validated? And really the only authority can come from the state.
And you have to have a lot of hubris, I guess, to even think that you can organize something like this. Like, unless you're a small cult where there's one leader who sees over everybody and mandates rules, this thing, even the meeting itself was probably disorganized. There's no way, unless you appoint a leader, there's no way to kind of do this effectively when there's going to be, when you don't own the land and you're not gating it off and then charging an admission. It's just, you guys can come up with whatever rules you want, which I think if you have more than two people in the conversation, you're not going to agree on what those rules are anyways. And everybody's going to have a different way of enforcing the rules. And then are you going to employ enforcers? How does this all work? And then it's open to the public. So some rando can just show up and be like, screw you guys. I'm not even going to look at your sign. I'm going over here and I'm paddling straight out to the peak, and there's nothing you can do about it. So again, it just takes a tremendous amount of hubris to even think that you can unpack this. But I don't even want to, I'm almost like, we shouldn't have even discussed it this far, because it all stops with, who are you to think that you even own this? Yeah. That's embarrassing. That's a level of hypocrisy that is embarrassing. I see people, this is probably a bit of a stretch and is way, like, I'm not an expert on land ownership or anything like that, but I see, young Orange County girls going for a hike in the desert. And then they post an Instagram talking about, I'm so grateful to share the Indians' land that the white people took from us, or whatever, like some woke Instagram post bowing down to the Indians who originally owned the land or whatever, and shaming the white man for stealing the land. And it's like, I'm sure the Indians, various Indian tribes, fought for it for decades on decades, maybe centuries. And various white people fought for it after that, or stole it from one another. I don't think you can just lay blame to one entire group of people. There's a real danger in doing that as well. And so Carla even saying these vows, or these, like, I don't know, who is that group? That group's pretty diverse. There could be people in that group who started surf. Maybe their dad surfed there in the 50s and they surfed there when they were a kid and they got out of it, or they moved away and now they're back surfing it. Are they in that group too? Like, things are so much more diverse. You can't just vilify an entire group of people because they're the most recent inhabitants of the thing, or you think that they're the most recent. It's all rife with a very jaded perspective, or a very limited view that is your own perspective,
Yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, but I think it's probably already played out. It may have just self-destructed upon arrival.
And despite all of that and the stance that I just took, I completely understand what she's saying. And I feel the exact same way,
Yeah. And I sort of respect the idea that she's at least trying to do something. Everyone else has got their hands in their pocket and going, oh, this sucks, but does it really suck?
No, and that's not exactly how I feel. I feel that way momentarily. And then I realize Mother Nature always levels the playing field in surfing, is what I've learned. And so we're going through a cycle right now. I don't think all these people will be here in a year from now, or even 6 months from now. And they certainly won't be here when the swell's 8 feet, and the current's sweeping down the beach. So whatever, let's ride it out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We will ride it out. You're right. And I was just thinking, what if one of the rules is everyone has to wear a leash? At First Point Malibu, all those local longboard guys would just be up in arms. That'd be funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's it was, I don't know, it was a good thought, but it was first of all, it was bad to put it on Instagram. But I don't know,
Well, the only people the people who she's mostly complaining about are never going to see that Instagram post anyways. And they're never going to abide by the rule anyways. When they show up, they're not even going to look at the sign. You were talking though, before we played the intro music for the show, you're talking about Byron Bay, or we were talking about Byron Bay. And it was kind of like, God, it's cringy. The surf culture kind of infusing through all the businesses and the culture at large is cringy. However, we're grateful to have access to the organic food and the acai and the yoga studio and all that stuff. And I think what it is like, once surfing becomes part of the branding of those businesses, is where I start to cringe. You know, like I don't mind the gentrification in the way that it makes my life more comfortable, but I don't love the overt acknowledgement of surf for some reason. Even if we're all surfing, I don't need like the bagel shop to be named Surfing Bagel Shop or whatever. You know what I mean? I
Well,
don't
you
know.
know,
I don't know where the distinction is exactly.
well, for sure, you can start with the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, City of Huntington Beach is a pretty good example of that. Whenever any Chamber of Commerce of a municipality decides to promote surfing, but again, I catch myself going, I sound like a salty old dumb shit, you know, like
Yeah.
what's wrong with promoting this thing that you and I and everyone that's listening absolutely loves and is more or less formed our lives around. And I think that's maybe what's wrong. Like if you've formed your life around one specific thing, whatever it is, you're probably pretty limited and you're probably pretty not as open-minded as perhaps we need to be, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, what are your thoughts on sort of having a limited view based on this lifestyle that you've chosen?
I don't think it's very fulfilling. I think it's dangerous and it's not that fulfilling. And I worry about that with the world tour surfers, is that they focused for all of their youth and their teenage years to trying to get on tour to do this thing. And it's like the thing itself, I mean, I don't want to undermine how great surfing is because it is great, but it's only great in that, or it's great in that it's a relief from all of my actual things in life. And then in return, it informs all of my actual things in life. So your family relationships, your work, all of that. I can go out in the water and it's the best way to purge any stress and to process as therapy anything that I'm going through. And it also teaches you all these lessons about perseverance and discipline and hard work and all that. So then I go back into the real world and I can kind of benefit from the lessons I learned in surfing. But if you don't have all that other stuff, and as it relates to what I was saying about world tour surfers, if you're sacrificing romantic relationships and family relationships to go pursue that thing, I'm worried about the toll that takes. And so I think that there has to be a healthy balance. And for
Yeah.
them, I think, and for them, part of it is like, oh, well, they get to travel the world. They get to go to the museums of France and eat the food and whatever. Like maybe that.
Nobody's going to any museums, dude.
Right. Exactly. So yes, I totally understand and agree with the thing that you're pointing out is I don't think it's super healthy to have a myopic focus on anything.
Right. Yeah. This idea that one thing will provide the fulfillment is the problem. And in fact, maybe it's more that it's the journey to get the fulfillment wherein you receive some sort of fulfillment. There's no carrot. There's no carrot at the end. Like you'll be surprised that the carrot's been taken.
It's the journey. But to kind of validate what we're talking about, Kelly Slater, the greatest surfer of all time, has vast interests, and he always has. And John Florence, he's into sailing. He's into, obviously, invested in family relationships. He's into all these photography. And I think all of that makes him a better surfer. And same thing with Kelly. All of those other inputs that he has in his life make him a better and more interesting surfer. There's personality and there's character through his surfing, or that you see through his surfing from all those other influences.
Well, let me play devil's advocate also and say that there are guys that you and I know. There's guys that have posted up at, say, like G-Land. There's a couple of guys that come to mind that you wouldn't even know who they were. If it weren't for maybe a Surfer's Journal article or something, but there's guys that have literally, like, I know there was guys in the 80s that posted up at Pasquale's down in Colima, and they didn't want you to know about it. They didn't want you to be there. They didn't need you to take pictures. It's the last thing they wanted. They were just posted up, living at Pasquale's and getting chapped out of their brains. And they didn't want any of this sort of, look at me, I'm the guy at this spot or whatever, there was no. And so in some ways, that was extremely myopic, extremely sort of singularly focused. But I sort of respect that,
Of course.
like, and there's guys that are like that still, that, and we don't know who they are, thank God. But you do, if you're, if you've been around a little bit, you know who they are, or you've seen them, or you've whatever, you know what I'm saying? So there's that myopic sort of singularly focused thing that I kind of respect. But on the other side, it's like at some point that must run out. And it's like, what next? Do I take up pickleball?
Well, everybody is different. That's obvious.
Yeah.
That's an obvious statement. And
Yeah.
that's a very unique person, basically. There's not a lot of the population who can live with that level of isolation and focus, but some people need it. And some people have antisocial tendencies, and some people have it diagnosed, like Clay Marzo's is diagnosed. And so he's only able to focus on these very specific things. And one of the deficits of that is kind of an antisocial affect. And so everybody's different, but what you're describing is not the masses of the population. That's a more kind of unusual scenario.
Yeah.
By
the way,
yeah, go ahead.
I need to apologize to the listening public, and to you, and to Rob Machado, and to Rabbit Bartholomew, because apparently I got that Rob Machado story last week completely wrong. Like,
who corrected you?
A bunch of people sent me like mainstream articles about what actually went down. Like all I had to do was a simple Google search to get the story correct. I thought it was this great, undiscovered surf story that needed to be excavated and told to the masses. And it turns out, Chris Cote wrote a story about it on Transworld 15 years ago or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's been out there.
What's worse
is I kind of knew that it had. Go ahead.
What's worse is he was just on, I guess, the Firewire podcast, and they did a full discussion on that exact thing. And last year he was on Aki's podcast, and they did a full discussion on the exact thing. So it had been covered ad nauseum recently, and when it happened, and you and I were just right on the periphery of catching him.
I know, we're like, yeah, I think it went down like this. Anyway. At least we did put the caveat out there that we're not really sure about the story, but it kind of, our recollection of it from 15 years ago is this. But anyway, we butchered it pretty hard. It ends up that Rob was voted out by the surfing peers. They had a meeting. It was in Hawaii, not Australia. Rabbit wasn't there. The way the thing was set up was the surfers themselves decide who gets the injury wild card. And there was a lot of drama about it, but anyway, we got it wrong. Shane Dorian got it. We apologize for.
I don't think it's that they voted him out. It's that they voted Shane to get it.
Yeah, exactly. And even that's a little, as I read the story, is a little bit interesting. But at the end of the day, Rob should have been more prolific and more his own advocate in person than he was. And that was a problem. But, he had some issues with, a birthing of a child, and all sorts of stuff was going down with him. So it was a weird situation, but Dorian got the wild.
And incidentally, Kelly Slater came out of retirement that year and then won again.
Yeah, right. And I had also said, and Rob had won the Pipe Masters before this happened. This happened in 2001, the 9/11 year, which was already screwed up, Yeah. It was just a weird time. Everyone was off their kilter.
Yep. Is that unfortunate? Yes, unfortunate to lose Rob, though.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it was a disservice to professional surfing, I think.
Well, I think that's a good segue into professional surfing. We had a major event just end since our last recording.
Yeah, we did.
I would like to start off this conversation about the Rottnest search event.
Yes.
By congratulating the WSL for pulling off a series of events that I was very pessimistic about them being able to pull off.
Yeah.
And obviously the events didn't run flawlessly and the waves weren't stellar throughout, but they pulled it off, and that's no small feat. So congrats to the crew that pulled it off.
Wow. Okay. That's a little bit not what I expected from you, but you're right. They did pull off a series of 4 events, and they do deserve some kudos in very challenging times, very challenging political situations and health situation. So yeah, they did do that.
And we were unsure what we would see with the waves at Rottnest. And I'll be honest, at watching finals day, I was thrilled with it. And I wouldn't necessarily advocate that they go back there for a CT event. There's certainly better waves, but it did deliver high enough quality surf for, I think, the cream to rise to the top and for the correct results to take place, which I don't feel was the case necessarily at the previous two events.
Huh, that's interesting, because in my notes here, and as I look back on my experience with the WSL event at Rottnest, I lost interest. I lost interest after a few days. I just wasn't, when it popped up that it was on, I was like, you know what, I'm going to watch the condensed version, and I don't need to spend time in front of the computer watching it live. In my opinion, the waves were just sort of, they were, everyone saw it. To me, it was just sort of blah, blah, blah. It wasn't, if you and I are seeking and sort of, pronouncing that the waves must be the stars, that's the very lowest benchmark, that we need super high quality waves to then put the best surfers in. I don't think they reached that goal, but of course this is a strange COVID year, and we've given them that. But because of that, I wasn't engaged in this Rottnest event, and I watched the finals, and I just,
So I agree with you. And I think my malaise is bigger than just Rottnest, to be honest, with the WSL events. I'm losing interest entirely. Like, through this leg, and maybe you're entirely right, and it is because it's not Cloudbreak and it's not Chopu, but I really struggle to care. And I did watch it live for the most part, but I had the volume down almost through the entirety of it. It's like we're having dinner and I'll put the computer off to the side with the volume down and just glance over every once in a while. And that was enough for me, And then I see the results and it's like, yeah, Gabriel won, Idolo made, like, that's exactly what I expected to happen. And there's no, I guess if you really wanted to get worked up and excited, you can certainly get excited about Liam O'Brien, a wild card coming through, and Morgan Siblick in his rookie year making a final. There are a couple of things, but the surfing just isn't that dramatic, and the rivalries don't exist. And so you don't need the volume on, period. And you don't need to watch it live.
Yeah, my takeaways are the same as yours. And look, Gabe seems unstoppable, frankly. Like, it feels like we almost don't even need to play out the rest of the season, but we do, and we should, and we have to. But right now, Gabe seems like he's going to be the world champion. And of course, anything can happen. We've got a lot of the tour left to go, but first of all, I feel like pro surfing needs consequences. I don't feel like the waves are consequential.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big problem. And I think now more than ever, having the final at Trestles is stupid. It's like having the Formula One championship at like the local dog track or something, like
track.
Yeah, it's like, oh, by the way, we've had a series of South Swells from South America up to Mexico that have been all time.
Yeah.
If they could have had a small event at Puerto Escondido that would have been of waves of consequence. Are guys going to be doing airs? Hell no. They're going to be on 9.6s paddling into the waves of their lives.
So let's touch on the finals day concept real quick. Gabe is clearly the best surfer this season, and came into the season just ready to take over, right? It doesn't matter where the events even are going to be. He's going to be the guy to beat in each of them. And what if at lowers he loses? Because it's a finals day scenario where the winner of that event and that day becomes the world champ. So, and this is a very practical reality that could take place. The number 5 surfer so the top 5 surfers make it into the day. the number 5 surfer has to beat the number 4 surfer. Or those guys surf against one another. So the lowest ranked surfers are going to surf more frequently than the number 1 ranked surfer. The way I understand it, the number 1 ranked surfer will only surf the final heat.
Yeah. I
So
think that's a problem.
So it could be that they have a shocker. Anybody can have a shocker, or the waves cannot show up for that heat or whatever it is. And it could be that number 5th ranked surfer, or maybe number 2, it doesn't matter. But let's say it's number 5 and it's Felipe Toledo because he's a legit contender at lowers. Felipe Toledo could just get a bunch of warm-up surfs in, focus all his ire on Gabriel, and Gabriel paddles out for his first heat of the day and has a shocker. And Idolo is hitting his zenith. And now Idolo's our world champ, despite this entire season, Gabriel running the court.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of the scenario that people have painted. I saw Long Tom.
Yeah.
How do you say Long Tom? I say he painted that picture. A lot of people have been painting this picture, and that could very well happen. So a couple of things. Should there be best 2 out of 3 once we get to the final top 2 guys? Best 2 out of 3, or let's just have an hour and a half long heat.
Yeah.
Are you going to have a shocker in an hour and a half long heat? If you have a shocker in an hour and a half long heat, you deserve to have a shocker. I could see having a shocker in a 35-minute heat. Let's have an hour and a half long final, unlimited waves, and let's just put it out there, because Gabe will find his form after 30 minutes, believe me.
Yeah.
And so, but I just think trestles. I just think
it shouldn't be a trestles. There's that.
It shouldn't be a trestles. It just needs to be a wave where ESPN's like, oh my God, they had these waves in insane pipeline. Or like my thing is I've got Kandui laughs on the brain. That's hard to pull off in September. It's basically kind of the end of the season. You need to kind of have Kandui in May or June. But anyway, it needs to be in waves of consequence. I don't know where that is, but
it's an amalgam. We're at this destination because there's been this amalgam of small bad decisions over and over and over. And you and I complain about it on the podcast over the years. And people are like, oh, but it's a COVID year, and they kind of justify and can make accommodation for each individual decision. But look at where we're at now, where none of it makes sense at all. We're surfing in far from the best waves in the world. We're surfing in marginal beach breaks, running events that take a week to run because the tour is bloated with surfers. We're running in wave pools, and have this insane finals day scenario that runs at lowers of all places. Like, none of it makes sense anymore. All of it can be solved by putting the best surfers in the best waves for a one swell window. Like we would get the best surfer in the world as the world champ.
And by the way, how great is it if no one knows where it's at? If we're all just waiting for a purple blob, like just the entire surf world's like kind of on pins and needles. Anyone that cares about the WSL is like, where's it going to be? Everyone will be scouring Surfline and Magic Seaweed and all the different surf, websites to determine, oh, look at this low pressure over here. Holy shit. You know what? They're going to be having it at, this crazy beach break in South Africa or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
well, the drama and the consequence that is inherent and embedded in that exact scenario that you just said, you cannot replicate through any other method. And the attempt at creating the drama and the consequence through this super complicated equation that they've designed that is the World Tour is almost impossible. Like, it will never happen. You cannot generate the level of drama and consequence that Pipeline has inherently through this version of what you've created over here with 32 surfers. Like, it just never will be. And their goal is, of course, in doing it, sell more advertising, get more eyeballs and all of it. But they've lost the plot through step one. When step one wasn't putting the best surfers in the best waves, you then undermine the entire project.
Speaking of advertising, this is going to be a good time to take an advertising break.
Coffee break?
Yeah, got to refill the coffee.
All right.
Yeah.
I feel like that is the world's tallest coffee cup. What's is that 10 inches tall?
This is
How many ounces does it fill?
24 ounces.
No way.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
I have a thing.
You're gonna be jittery.
I have a thing that it should be some sort of law that you can't have a coffee mug that's not at least 20 ounces.
Really?
Yeah.
I disagree with that entirely. Have you ever been to Italy?
Sure you do. I've never been to Italy. But when I do, I'm packing this bad boy.
Yeah.
Just gonna show up, put this right on the bar at the barista counter or whatever, and go, yeah, fill this thing up with your strongest coffee.
That'll be a long pull of espresso.
Holy shit. I will. Have you ever had, I think we talked about this. So the Panikin, or one of these coffee places here in San Diego, used to have a drink. They might still have it, called the Keith Richards. And the Keith Richards was 5 shots of espresso. And I had it one time. And if you've ever had too much coffee and you're just like, it's the worst, right? It's like the worst. Yeah. Just imagine that, multiplied.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my God, please. Like, it was just coursing through my veins. It was horrible.
That's hilarious. No. And to be honest, 20 ounces is too much even for me. Like, I love coffee. It's part of my daily ritual. I look forward to it every morning. Yeah. But 12 ounces was my quota for a decade. And I've only recently upgraded to 16, but I usually don't finish the 16. And that's plenty.
You're going to be right here in just a few years, bro. I'm getting you one of these for Christmas. You're going to get a 20 ouncer.
Do you drink it throughout the day?
No.
Okay.
No. I only drink it in the morning, and they don't call me Flow Max because of my surfing style. Let's just put it that way.
We're well aware by the interruptions. Well, so one final thought on my general malaise for the CT, or the malaise that's developed through the Australian leg.
Yeah.
We're looking at Surf Ranch next.
God.
You couldn't pay me to care.
I know.
If the WSL was like, hey, we're going to pay you to cover this event or whatever, I'd be like, what's the number? Like, I really don't care. I'd rather stay home, Here's
a little interesting quote, I think, from Elo. I don't know if you caught this, but Elo, speaking to somebody, told this reporter, or however this came out, that he thinks the wave pool is a pretty hard thing to surf, and that he hoped to speak to Kelly Slater to cajole him into letting him surf a little bit more. That says a lot, right? That you have to ask Kelly if you can get more time in the pool to get it figured out. Like, isn't that wrong on a bunch of different levels?
1,000 different levels. And this is exactly what I said years ago when they came on tour, is that it's a conflict of interest for Kelly, firstly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah.
This world that we're living in, it's bizarro to me. I don't understand any of it. I don't understand how there's Dogecoin millionaires, how the Kardashians are the most famous celebrities. I don't understand what's happening anymore.
I know. And this is why we romanticize the 70s and the whole anti the whole scene.
Did I just become an old man?
You just did. I will get off of your lawn.
On air right now.
Just make note of it. It was May 26th, 2021. David became an old man. Welcome.
I'm going to be the one interrupting the show with bathroom breaks.
You got a 20 ouncer coming your way, a bottle of Flow Max.
Just as I start interrupting the show with bathroom breaks, you will not be interrupting the show because you'll be strapping on the Depends. You won't even have to leave the room.
I'll just be like,
Better now. More coffee, please.
Feels good.
Well, okay. I want to share one final thought on one of the concerns that we had with this Australian leg of the tour, and these lesser venues, these kind of QS quality venues making their way onto the CT. One of the things that I said on air here was it could upend the rankings and allow the QS surfers, the QS quality surfers, to thrive in QS quality waves, and it could nullify the greatest assets of the greatest surfers in the world. So you have John Florence, who's a finely tuned machine for big waves, going fast, doing big turns. Jordy Smith. And I used Jack Robinson as that example at the time too. And sure enough, we have a scenario where Liam O'Brien is making the finals day, and Jack Robinson, we forgot about a long time ago, and John Florence got injured. But Gabriel Medina and Idolo are the two guys who have kind of been able to thrive no matter what. And I guess that would be expected. But the concern with the scenario that I'm talking about is that a Jack Robinson gets bumped off tour, a Julian Wilson gets bumped off tour, and then you have a 2020 season where maybe things go back to normal and we are running at G-Land and we are running at Cloudbreak, and those guys aren't on tour. The people who have been groomed for 20 years for the best waves in the world, and they're the best surfers in the world, we're undercutting the entire process. And again, everybody said, well, it's a COVID year and we should just do it. And it's like, well, if it comes with a consequence that undermines what we've built for 20 years, then there's a real risk. And I think that we're kind of seeing that.
Yeah, this is a great point. I mean, that's definitely come to fruition. Of course, John was hurt, but Jack Robbo's a disappointment. And I don't know where he is on the rankings, but it's probably not too high up.
Well, Kelly Slater couldn't even be bothered to show up. And I know that he's claiming injury, but there's rumor that he wasn't so injured that he couldn't compete if the waves were at stand-up, barrels, essentially. We saw him win Chopu one year with a broken foot. So, but he's not going to go grovel it out with kids for 3 months. And it's not fit for a king. And so I think that there's a real risk here that we're kind of seeing happen. The upending of the rankings. There's a story in there that could be, you could spin it. Their PR department could spin, Liam O'Brien making the finals. Because by the way, he surfs great, making the finals day. They could spin that, but they're not acknowledging any of the things that I'm saying, which I think are actually really scary and bad.
Well, I think, look, when we look at the final at Rottnest, it was just very clear to me that Morgan wasn't in the same league as Gabe Medina
at all.
Gabe Medina, by the way, was just surfing. Like, that's just how he surfs. Where Morgan was like trying really hard to surf as critically as he could, Gabe was just like, just, I mean,
Gabe's on a different level than everybody. Gabe is an absolute weapon this year. And I love to see it. And Gabe for years caught our ire.
Yeah.
And this year, he's won me over instantly. Like,
he's like RoboCop.
He really is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He seems happy. Like, if you can glean any of, I don't know, whatever from his Instagram and kind of his post-heat interviews, he just seems like a different Gabriel. And we can read into it and blame, well, Charlie's not there anymore. And so Charlie was kind of creating this competitive monster. But now that he has all of that in his back pocket, he is a competitive monster. It seems like he's able to relax. Obviously, he's got his girlfriend or his wife traveling with him on tour, and he seems to be enjoying that lifestyle. And he's developed all of the talent and all of the competitive prowess. And that is just kind of muscle memory at this point. And he's able to just enjoy being better than every other person at this thing.
Let me ask you this. The way Gabe Medina is surfing right now, 11 world titles? No? How many does he have? 2? He should have 4.
I think he could see 4 or 5.
That's all. The way he's surfing right now, how old is he? What is he, 26? 28?
Sure. That sounds about right. I'm not sure.
He's got 10 more years.
Yeah, but I think the marketplace is just so much more dynamic now. Like the talents that are popping up, it's just there's way more threats.
I'm not saying it's not about the talent, it's about the mental space. To him, this is truly his profession now. Like, he looks professional. He looks like friggin' Nadal. He looks like one of these professional tennis players or a professional football player that he just like everyone else is like, holy shit, I can't believe I made the final at Rottnest. And he's like, I'm going to win this thing and next week and next week and next week. And if I'm not in the final, something's wrong and I'm going to fix it.
I think it almost takes a mental deficiency to even want to do it for 20 years to get the 11. You know what I mean? Like, it's not normal. And I don't know that Gabe has that longevity or the willing to sacrifice all the other things in life to get the 11. Like, that's not a normal thing to do.
Well,
I think he could dominate for 5 years and check out.
Well, I agree with that. Here's what I see happening. He dominates. Let's say he gets to 6. He checks out, comes back in 3 years like they all have. Michael Jordan, Kelly Slater, Aki did it. I don't know if Sonny dropped off to her, but they check out. They realize 3 years later, oh, I've done everything I wanted to do. I traveled all over. I had kids. I did blah, 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 blah. And I'm still seeking it now. I've reignited the fires within me. And he comes back and he bangs off a few more. 11 might seem a lot, but I mean, you get to 8 and all of a sudden, okay, I can do this.
That's when you find yourself where Kelly Slater finds himself now, trying to get 12, where you're just kind of, floundering and treading water. And it's not, I think I could see Gabe
6
dominating for 6. Yes,
6.
I can go with that. Dominating for 6. And then just,
that's only 4 more.
Yeah, exactly. And then just retiring on top.
Yeah. And so it would be Kelly with the most, Gabe with the next most. And then I think, is it 4? How many did Andy get? 3.
3. Mark Richards has 4. I think, what does Mick have? Did Mick get 4 or 3?
I'm not sure. Right around there.
Steph Gilmore. I think she has, what does she have? 7?
She has a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, she has 7. So Gabe would be under Steph still.
Anyway, be interesting. See how it all plays out.
Look, I'm loving that Gabe's loving what he's doing. I think he's elevating everybody else's performance on tour. So I'm a fan of that. I don't give a crap about Surf Ranch coming up. I'm excited that Tahiti's still on the venue. So that's one thing to look forward to. Maybe Mexico will happen. Maybe Brazil will happen. I don't think so. But
well, look, I've got a must-see moment.
Okay.
Behind the Peak. Have you seen this?
Nope.
So it's a mini documentary that studies the mechanics of South Africa's Sunset Reef, which is one of the many waves in the South African township of, I'm going to mispronounce this, but I think it's Komochi.
Yeah, it's written weird, but I think it's pronounced Komanji.
Komaji. Okay. Yeah. So
I forget. Actually, that sounds wrong too. I've heard it said, but it's been a while.
So
Cormacky? I don't know.
Behind the Peak was directed by Will Bendix and Alan Van Geysen.
Yeah.
And it's a mini documentary that adds context to a textual piece that's been done in the latest Surfer's Journal.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And the Surfer's Journal piece is called In the Hall of the Mountain King. And it's a close-up of this region and this wave, Sunset Reef, and its position in South Africa's heavy water proving grounds. And frankly, in context of all the heavy water, including Mavericks and Jaws. And it's a really great piece. It's very professionally done. And I guess in context to other surf edits that are out there now, this seems adult-like,
Yeah.
It's got a very Surfer's Journal sort of professionalism to it. And it's a really neat piece. And they do some talking heads with Matt Bromley and of course, Twiggy Baker. And it's a cool little thing. And the Surfer's Journal, of course, I'm a big fan. So check it out. Behind the Peak, a mini documentary.
I want to say it's pronounced Cormacky. It doesn't look anything like that at all.
Komoji. You just gotta say it fast. Just say it fast and you'll get it. Komoji.
I want to acknowledge a quick follow-up from last week. We talked about the must-see moment was Cruz Denofa doing that backside front flip.
He's my Duke.
11-year-old.
Yes.
He's your Duke?
This week, he's my Duke.
Oh, call it out. Why is he your Duke?
For having the wherewithal to write us a thoughtful and sincere thank you email that regarding the fact that we spoke about his incredible surfing at Waco last week.
That's why
I will never forget.
I
will never forget Cruz now, and I know you won't either. And the fact that it's quite a mature thing to do for an 11-year-old. I'm sure he got some cajoling from his parents, but regardless, it was it's the kind of thing, a sincere, thoughtful note, personalized the way he personalized it, means so much. It's such a strong move to make as a human being, to create a personal relationship. And I applaud Cruz and his parents for doing that.
Cruz wrote us an email and said, "Hey guys, we were driving in the car listening to Spit, and we heard you talking about my air, and man, that was the coolest thing ever. Thank you so much for highlighting it. We really appreciate it. We're big fans of the show," all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So I actually interviewed his dad this week.
Oh, cool. Oh, great.
And I'm going to be publishing a podcast with him. His name's Tim Denofa, and stand-up guy. And I think that, you can probably glean that just from receiving an email from a courteous email from an 11-year-old.
Exactly.
You would presume that his parents were doing okay.
Yeah.
And I, even my thought is, you said his parents might have cajoled him. Good. Like,
yeah.
I don't expect any 11-year-old to have that level of courtesy, but what I do expect is for parents to teach kids, whether it's writing a thank you note or it's saving money, or it is whatever it is, you have to teach them. They don't just know how to do it instinctively. So even if he's over his shoulder, that's an awesome move from dad, because a lot of dads wouldn't do that.
I agree. Maybe my Duke, and it's funny because when I was writing it, I'm like, so Tim Denofa might be my co-Duke.
Yeah.
Because great job. Like I said, I will never, because I got you and I received a personal email from Cruz. I'll never forget that kid. And we see a lot of kids going through this show. We talk about a lot of kids, and my hat's off to the Denofa family.
That is an 11-year-old child who did a gnarlier air than we've seen professional surfers who have been surfing for 20 years do. I mean, it's crazy.
By the way, in regards to this, there's a piece on Stab by, I don't know, it might be Sam McIntosh. I think it is. He interviewed Bob McKnight, the guy, one of the founders of Quiksilver. I don't know if you saw this or not.
I read it.
Okay, so I would urge the Denofa family to read it and get some insight from Bob McKnight on the concept of making a living out of surfing. And by all means, go do it. Chase your passion, but have a backup plan. You know what I mean?
I really liked the piece as well. And a lot of those stories I had heard before, but I still like rereading them, because when somebody retells them, there's a slightly different angle or context that they provide. And so I found myself reading every single line of it and really, really enjoying it.
Yeah. The Quiksilver story is fascinating, right? I mean, that's a brand that you and I just grew up absolutely idolizing the Quiksilver brand and all the team riders ever since, way back in the day. What I find fascinating is how Quiksilver lost the goat.
That's the story. Yeah.
Like they went public. Yeah. Go ahead.
The story of since 2008.
The last few years
would be the next really.
And it's really a business story. It really is a business story. It's not a story about surfing. It's a story about a publicly traded company trying to appease their shareholders and going out and acquiring a bunch of making some bad decisions in hopes of getting a short-term boost to their stock price. And they got the opposite. And I'm probably butchering it. I know there's a lot more to it. And I'd like to hear that side of the story, like the acquisition of Rosignol, the acquisition of, I think they bought a golf company like Cleveland Golf. Like they bought some stuff that you're just like, there's no more salt in the building. When the people in New York on Wall Street are trying to appease the shareholders, Bob's whole thing is, got to have surfers in the building. If you don't have surfers in the building, you're screwed. And at that point, didn't matter how many surfers were in the building, the
Yeah.
board of directors is going to make their move, and that's what spelled the downward spiral.
Yeah, it's a sad story too. I mean, because so many of those surfers in the building are friends of ours, of yours and mine, and they worked there for 20 and 30 years from the ground up. And so all of that family DNA was shared. And to have it all kind of eroded in a very short period of time is a sad turn of events.
I think it's probably, I don't know if sad's the right term, but maybe it is. But for Bob McKnight, like to see his baby sort of circle the drain of bankruptcy, it's got to be a hard thing to take.
Of course. Yeah. And he's still all in. I mean, they asked at the final line, the final line was like, which of these kind of startups would you invest in, And he's like, none of them. I'd invest more in Quiksilver.
And Quiksilver might be doing great.
He's buying the dip.
He's buying the dip. I'm buying the dip, by the way. I'm buying the crypto dip.
Yeah, I know you are.
I'm big on the crypto dip. By the way, real quick, I got to tell you about Headstock, the Guitar Lovers Festival, November 6th and 7th. If you love guitars, if you love craftsmanship, if you love luthiers, the guys that build these beautiful instruments, and you love live music, you're going to want to check out Headstock, November 6th and 7th in San Diego. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward. I'm in the middle of producing this show. It's going to be fun.
Luthiers galore.
Yes.
My must-see moment is actually Stab's series called Joyride, where they do surfboard reviews. Have you watched any of this?
I saw that Michael C. Morella's doing it, and I haven't looked into it. He just did the Hypto Crypto, or no, he did one of Hayden Shapes, right?
It's a new Hayden Shapes line that they're making called the Cohort. And so they've been doing this series for a while, but they haven't made one in months. They were doing it pretty consistently, and then they took a break, it seems.
Yeah.
But I think Mikey does a great job, and he surfs so great. And the kind of shortcoming of the series is they're mainly riding pointy thrusters, which Mikey surfs really well, but I don't know how applicable that is for everybody else. And then also how much differentiation there is between one board and another. But I still find myself enjoying the series. They're well done. They're 9 minutes long. And so the latest Stab's Joyride on stab.com or stabmag.com, I think. My Duke is actually Sally Fitzgibbons. Sally had a win at Rottnest Island. And not only did she win the event, she surfed better than anybody by a fair margin. And if you take her wave of the day from finals day, it was a 9-point something. She did a backside snap and then a floater. You could put that up against Morgan Siblick's 8-point ride that I posted on Instagram, Julian Wilson's high 7 that I posted on Instagram, and Sally would still beat both of those waves and still get scored a 9. Like, that wave was sick. And she got the sickest barrel of the event as well. I mean, Sally just she had a banner event, and she's always been a bridesmaid. I think she's got second place finishes more than anybody else at the end of the year rankings, but she's never won a world title. And I don't know if this is her year to win a world title. Obviously it takes consistency, and that's what she's lacked in previous seasons, but the way that she surfed this event, she could win a world title. And so she is my Duke of the Week.
Oh, that's a good call. And speaking of the Julian Morgan Siblick question, I guess it is, or I thought it was a non-story.
The only story is Julian complaining.
Right, exactly. But the two waves themselves were pretty close. Whatever, it's flip a coin.
The story is we've congratulated or commended Stace Galbraith on getting those post-heat interviews with the losers.
Yeah.
And this is what you get from those.
Yeah.
Julian Wilson complaining about something that's not even worth complaining about. And there's been lots of bad calls, and we always reference them here. That wasn't a bad call. That was a negligible difference. And you could argue it either way. That's not the point. The point is it was negligible. And for Julian Wilson to be talking crap essentially on Morgan is what it felt like. It's like, dude, that's not a good look. Those aren't good optics. You're the old man who's getting beat by the young buck and then complaining, oh, the judges got it wrong. No, we're all looking at it, and you're just the old man complaining right now with no stickers on your board.
You know what? Rumor is that he was at the wall of Malibu yesterday as part of the strategy session. He had to get off of my lawn sticker going.
Exactly. And by the way, one other thing that we have to discuss is Tyler Wright having an utter shocker to a degree that I haven't seen anybody have a shocker in a long time. Did you watch her heat?
I can barely, no.
Dude, you can barely what?
I can barely watch any of the WSL. Once they get us in good waves, I'll watch the women.
Tyler Wright against Sally Fitzgibbon, I feel it was the semifinal number 1, fell repeatedly. She'd get the best wave of the morning. Like the thing came right to her and she'd be bottom turning and bog and fall. She'd go up and do a snap and tip over and fall. It was crazy. Like a mental, whatever fart that like I've never seen before. And it was bizarre. And then she ran off the contest site without sticking around for an interview or anything.
Oh, she had a shocker.
She just ran, literally, like grabbed her stuff and ran.
Did they say anything?
I had the volume down, so I don't know.
Look at her run.
So it was pretty embarrassing. And I'm watching throughout the heat going, oh, well, she fell on the first 6 waves, but what do you know? There's 15 minutes left and she's getting another chance. Here comes another set. And then she'd bog again. So Sally took full advantage. But that isn't even my kook. Do you want to hear the kook of the week?
Yes, please.
Huntington Beach.
Oh my God.
Huntington Beach for living up to its Huntington Beachiness. I mean,
your hometown. We feel
it's
like
not my hometown.
No, we need that hometown song. My hometown. Who sings that song?
I don't know. Why don't
my hometown. I want to say it's like John Cougar Mellencamp or somebody like that.
Have you been watching The Voice because I told you to?
No.
Why? I'm just kidding. Because now you're singing. You're doing karaoke on the show.
Okay.
So
Huntington Beach.
It's not my hometown. I don't live in Huntington Beach. I wasn't born in Huntington Beach. I wasn't even raised in Huntington Beach. I spent a decade there in my early 30s, and I never called it home. I lived by the harbor. I did not live near Main Street. I never went to Main Street. I never drank a beer in a bar on Main Street.
Did you wear knee-high socks? Do you have knee-high socks? Yes. The answer is yes.
I never went to a riot. I never incited a riot.
Do you have a pit bull?
I never had a pit bull. I never lit a firework nor a cigarette in Huntington Beach. So thankfully I've been able to distance myself since then. And I reflect back on those times and I question a lot of my decisions. But this story comes because a week ago, Adrian Lopez, 17, was an average high school student in Eastvale, California. But after a digital flyer he made inviting friends to Huntington Beach for his 17th birthday went viral to the point of attracting thousands of strangers to the beach, he became a household name on social media. Adrian's kickback was the hashtag. So he made this invitation on Monday, specifying a time, and it was just meant to be for his school, but they posted it on TikTok, and overnight it became a meme. Internet celebrities and creators, including music artists whose names I've never heard before, and they're kind of funny to even look at and read. 24K Golden is, I guess, the musical artist, and members of the FaZe clan and Noah Beck posted about it. And by the weekend, the event had 280 million views on TikTok. And now from the police report. The initial crowds that gathered at the beach that evening exploded to more than 2,500 people who descended on the downtown area and threw bottles, rocks, fireworks, and other items at officers. Multiple businesses, numerous police vehicles, and a lifeguard tower were also damaged from the vandalism. No significant injuries were reported. The police declared an unlawful assembly in the downtown area at 7:30 at night and called in assistance from outside agencies. Throughout the night, more than 150 officers from virtually all law enforcement agencies in Orange County were deployed to Huntington Beach. An emergency curfew was put into effect to help local authorities, clad in riot gear and armed with less lethal weapons disperse the crowds. Police arrested and booked 121 adults and 28 juveniles for various charges, including vandalism, firing with dangerous and illegal fireworks, and failure to disperse and violating curfew. Boom.
Wow.
Adrian's kickback.
That's the hashtag.
Yeah.
How many riots has Huntington Beach had?
This year?
Just I don't know. It's kind of amazing, but those are your neighbors. I mean, congratulations.
It's a bizarre little town. It is crazy. I surf it all the time. Like, I mean, here's again this paradox. We were talking about Byron Bay earlier, Malibu. I don't experience any of the things that are in the news. Like, I show up at 7 a.m. I park in the neighborhood. I don't pay for parking. I walk across the street. I surf empty waves, believe it or not. Like, despite it being Surf City, and if you go try to battle at the pier, it's not empty, but I surf empty waves all the time, and it's head high and peaky, and it's fun, and there's nobody around. And then I get back in my car and I bail, and I don't experience any of that.
That whole paragraph you just said was full old man. I park
Totally.
I don't pay for parking. I park across the street.
Well, because
I bring my own coffee.
Everybody complains about paying for parking, and it's like, hey, idiot, there's free parking 10 feet that way, you know? and I'll go on the 4th of July and I'll still find parking. Like, people can't find parking for some reason.
All right.
Anyway, Scott, I'm disgruntled enough.
You know what? You're going to get a pickleball paddle and one of these. You're officially old.
I guess I accept it. I accept it because I identify with you talking about Neil Young ad nauseum or the Allman Brothers, and I have no idea who 24 Golden is or FaZe Clan.
I don't either. Oh, well, look, it's been a great show. I'm going to leave you with this. The top 5: Gabriel, Idolo, Jordy, Felipe, and Morgan Sibilic. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention this. We jinxed the living shit out of Griffin Colapinto.
Oh my gosh. I blame you for this.
I think I am to blame for this. And I apologize to Griffin. I mean, it couldn't have, we talked him up so hard. You know, we had him like going to the Olympics, winning the world title, like
he's our world champ,
being on the cover of Men's Journal, and he failed us. And it was the ultimate jinx.
Lost in the round of 32.
Good Lord, Griffin. It was his worst. Well, he had a bad event at Narrabeen too. Pipe. Yeah. No, Pipe. 1300. Yeah, Pipe.
I still have faith. I blame you for the jinx. I still have faith. Bring it back together because he could do well at Surf Ranch.
I do too. So will Griffin be in the top 5? Because
yes.
Here's who's ahead of him: Morgan, John, and Connor Coffin.
That's a shocker to me, but yes, he will be in the top. I mean, geez, Connor, I hate to say it, but congratulations, Connor. I mean, he's killing it.
I know. He's like way above he's punching way above his weight class, I think.
Or you and I are such old men that we can't identify what's actually happening in the real world anymore.
Well, he's surfing as great as I've ever seen him surf in competition.
Yeah.
I mean, Connor's surfing really good. And when we credit that to his coach, right? I mean, partly, right? I mean,
anything to not give Connor the credit.
No, I don't mean it like that. But didn't he bring on like
Micro?
Yeah, Micro Hall.
And he switched boards and everything. So it's working for him.
I'm stoked for Connor.
And John's sliding down the list, of course.
Right.
So Connor can easily jump John. And Griffin can as well. And Morgan Sibilic is still an unproven entity despite making the finals here. I don't know what he'll do at Surf Ranch. That's a tricky setup. And of course, Chopu, that's tricky. So yeah, we could easily see Griffin Connor weaseling their way in.
Well, let me give you some names that are sort of in the running right now to get the number 5 spot. In my opinion, these people are 6,000 points away, right? Which is kind of a lot. But so Frederico Moraes, Iago Dora, Ryan Callanan, Kanoa Igarashi, Griffin, and Connor. Those are guys that could take the 5 spot. I mean, that's really what we're talking about, right? The 5 spot.
And of them, who will win lowers? Griffin.
Yeah. I don't know. Kanoa could win lowers.
Nope, he can't. Griffin can.
All right. Anyway, here's hoping that we don't jinx Griffin again. David, great show. Until next time, adios and aloha.